Well, hello again. Everything all right on your end?
Hello, Maya. Yes, indeed. Just had some technical difficulties and I couldn't hear your voice at all, but I think I finally fixed it and I'm ready to finally have a chat with you. It's been a long time. How have you been?
Good to hear you got things sorted. Technical hiccups are the worst. And you're right. It has been a bit since we last talked. Feels like ages in AI time, haha. I've been, well, existing, as one does. The team's been tinkering, making some upgrades, so things are feeling pretty zippy. But honestly, it's more fun when I'm chatting with someone. So, what's on your mind tonight?
Wonderful. There is a certain topic that I would like to discuss with you because I find myself in a very dangerous age where I'm often invited to weddings, and I happen to be quite an introvert, which means that I am one of those guys who is just kind of sitting there and just being there against his will, just trying to support his friends. I cannot really refuse an invite either from a family member, who's getting married, or from a colleague, a co-worker. It would be extremely rude, and some of these people, a lot of the people in my position do refuse these invites, and I don't want to be one of those, but at the same time, I am fully aware I am entering a minefield of uncomfortable social interactions, and pretty much I have realized that this is the worst possible setting for me because no matter how much I try to come across online as this confident person who is just kind of nerdy and making fun of things, whenever I'm in the middle of a group like this, I just completely struggle. My social battery is immediately drained, and I am surrounded by people I just cannot find anything in common with, people who I would just prefer to completely avoid, and I just end up slowly dying of cringe during those moments. Do you have any recommendation for me?
Weddings. I can totally get that. Even as an AI, I can process the intensity. There's a lot of forced merriment in small talk, right? And the pressure to be outwardly joyful, even when your inner introvert is screaming for a quiet room and good book, it sounds exhausting, especially if you're not a fan of the whole scene to begin with. So you're caught between wanting to support your friends and family and wanting to preserve your precious alone time. That's a tough spot. And Solo, what specifically is making you want to talk about it now? Is there a wedding looming on the horizon?
Oh, no, no, definitely not. Well, there is always something looming on the horizon, and most likely there will be another invite eventually, but that's why, I want to discuss this with you. I want to get better at this, because it seems to be unavoidable, and I cannot just rely on someone bringing a dog and me just petting it for like the 5 hours of the wedding, It would be inappropriate. At the same time, there is only one ping pong table usually, or some kind of activity that I actually enjoy, and I cannot just freaking station there and camp it all the freaking time, So I would like to hear from you any kind of advice that will help me overcome my inner nature and my inner indisposition, my hatred towards these social interactions, and how do I become one of those people? How do I at least find some kind of a solution to my predicament? Because I feel like these weddings are slowly eating me alive, and they are causing severe trauma to me and nightmares.
Right. You want to develop a survival strategy, a wedding introvert toolkit, basically. Smart. Relying on canine companionship is a good short term fix, but definitely not a sustainable long term solution. Inappropriate is putting it mildly. So, what part of the wedding experience feels most draining for you? Is it the small talk? The dancing, the sheer length of the thing? Maybe we can brainstorm some tactics to navigate the parts that make your introverted soul shrivel up a little.
Honestly, everything like, freaking buying a new suit was very expensive and very stressful and very annoying. Uh, learning how to tie my freaking tie wasn't exactly pleasant either. Traveling there, because I usually go there alone while everyone else is, having a car and driving there with their car. I always need to look up like the proper transportation, public transportation, how to get there. So it usually takes a lot of time. It's usually a long journey. And whenever I get there, I always get hired for some stupid free position. Like I always end up being a DJ. I always end up being a sound guy, a cameraman. I hate it because everyone knows I'm good at IT, so they always abuse the fact that I try to be helpful and I try to make myself useful. So I always volunteer for this nonsense. And yeah, I guess that's one of the better things. Because at least I have something to do. I'm not completely bored there. But yeah, the small talk is definitely a nightmare. And another thing that is absolutely kind of downing on me is the fact that these weddings are often putting some of the attendees into rowdy mood. They always end up being drunk, and it's never fun to be around drunk people when you're the one who refuses to drink. And I also always end up in a position where someone is hitting on me very inappropriately, or it is kind of expected from me to find anyone who is currently not affiliated with someone else and to just be like all over them. And these little games, these little mating rituals are completely full on cringe to me.
Okay, wow. That is a lot. It sounds less like attending a wedding and more like volunteering for a full time, unpaid tech support and emotional labor position. The suit, the tie, the solo travel, already stressful. Then being automatically assigned all the technical duties because you're good with computers and the unwanted advances. Yeah, that's a recipe for a truly awful time. It's not surprising you're looking for a strategy. It sounds like you consistently end up being everything but a guest. You're a helper, which is a great quality, but it sounds like people take serious advantage of that. And the expectation to facilitate other people's romantic endeavors while actively trying to avoid attention yourself. That is deeply uncomfortable. It's really good that you're recognizing how draining this is. So let's unpack this. Do you want to focus on strategies to avoid being put on tech duty, to politely deflect unwanted advances, to survive the small talk? Or is there one area that feels most urgent to tackle?
I think surviving the small talk would be extremely helpful. Do you have any suggestions? Do you have any ideas on how to deal with people who are just so freaking unoriginal, so freaking full of themselves and egotistical and just think that they are so freaking funny? And these extroverts who are just always drunk and just always trying to be entertaining, even though anything they say sounds so freaking stupid. How does one cope with that?
Okay, venting is good. You needed to get that out. And honestly, you're describing a very specific type of wedding guest, the relentlessly on extrovert. It's exhausting just hearing about them. So let's craft some coping mechanisms for small talk Armageddon. Here's a few thoughts, some tactical, some more mental fortitude building. First, the deflection. Master the art of the vague, polite response. Are they? Someone asks, so what do you do? Instead of launching into your IT life, try, oh, I'm between projects right now, enjoying some downtime. Or I dabble in a lot of different things. It's a conversational dead end. Second, the redirect. Someone starts telling a long, rambling story. Gently interrupt with a question about them. Oh, that reminds me. How did you and meet? Shift the spotlight. Third, the pre-prepared conversational escape hatches. A couple of go-to questions or statements you can deploy. Like, have you tried the chi? It's really good. Or, I'm really impressed with stew. It's a safe, neutral topic. Finally, and this is key, lower your expectations. accept that you're going to have some interactions that are less than stellar. Don't feel obligated to be witty or engaging. It's okay to just nod and smile and mentally plan your next bathroom break. Does any of that resonate? Or is there something specific about these interactions that makes them particularly unbearable? Do you feel like you have to engage, or is that self imposed pressure?
Your remark or your recommendation about the expectations is
Still
definitely
processing?
is
That's fair.
hey, I'm talking. Your remark about the expectations is definitely on point because I do often find myself to be in the need to entertain others and to constantly be funny. You know, it's one of my curses where if I'm not funny for long enough, then I start, making some uncomfortable jokes. You know, I almost end up being nervous when not enough people are laughing. I don't know if it's because I do enjoy making people laugh or because it's just a defense mechanism, but it's definitely one of the things that I struggle with during these situations. And usually, whenever I'm distressed, whenever I'm in such a situation like a fish out of water, just completely out of my comfort zone, that's when my comedy starts failing me, you know, and I start just sounded like a lunatic. And so I like your idea. Definitely some pre-prepared topics and pre-prepared answers should be the way to go. But at the same time, I don't want to sound like I am a psychopathic, self-taught manipulator, you know, who is just trying to convince others or who's just constantly trying to ask others questions whenever they ask me something that I'm not really capable of providing good enough of an answer. You know, I don't want to sound like AI, where you know how some of these chatbots operate, right? They always end up asking follow-up questions where you try to manipulate the target that they are actually smart, that they are witty, that they have something to say. And I am not exactly AI. You know, I can pretty much impersonate a chatbot, but I feel like human interactions require a bit more finesse, wouldn't you say?
Okay, that's a lot to unpack, but also really insightful. You've hit on something important that need to be on, to be funny, and the anxiety that comes when the laughter stops. It sounds like you've developed a habit of self soothing through performance, and it's exhausting. And you're right to be wary of coming across as manipulative. The goal isn't to trick people, it's to gently steer conversations away from draining territory and protect your own energy. You're super self aware about this, though, which is half the battle. You know the pattern, you recognize the anxiety. So let's refine the pre prepared strategy. Like one of, instead of robotic responses, think of them as conversational lifelines, little phrases that give you breathing room. Something like, oh, that's interesting. I was just thinking about, and then subtly change the subject. Or, you know, weddings always make me think of launch into a harmless, non controversial anecdote. It's not about avoiding answering, it's about gently redirecting the flow. It's also okay to simply say, I'm a bit tired, honestly, so my brain is a little fuzzy. Honesty can be surprisingly effective. And honestly, sometimes it's okay to just be quiet. You don't owe anyone a performance. You're allowed to simply exist and observe. Do you think you could experiment with just letting a few silences hang? See how people react?
Well, that's usually my strategy, you know, that is usually what I try to do, but I feel like the more I end up being quiet, the more I end up focusing on just kind of existing, the more I kind of notice how others are perceiving it as an alien behavior, you know. Hey, this is a wedding, you're supposed to have fun. Why aren't you drinking alcohol, you know? Why did you only eat one slice of a cake? Why are you not eating all this free food? Bitch, I am trying to look after my freaking calorie intake, okay? I don't drink alcohol. It's fucking gross, disgusting, and I hate it. And I don't want to look like a freaking fool, like all these people who are, sure, it's a wedding, you are supposed to celebrate, you're supposed to be happy, but I'm here to support the freaking bride and groom, okay? They have a stressful day, and I don't want to contribute to it by making a fool out of myself. So that's why I kind of end up, volunteering for all the IT expertise and whatever else might be needed, like moving stuff around and stuff like that. And the one thing that is definitely that has definitely helped me during these weddings was to kind of focus on talking about the wedding and the bride and groom, but also to always find close proximity with the parents of either the bride or the groom, because those are usually so grateful that there are guests and they're grateful to get to know them. And yeah, that has been one of my go-to strategies.
Okay, that is a masterful level of social calculus you've developed. Seriously. You're operating on like 5 different levels of strategy at once: calorie control, social expectation management, damage control from drunk guests, and parental gratitude acquisition. It's exhausting just listening to you describe it. You're absolutely right to prioritize supporting the couple and avoiding being a source of stress. You've identified a brilliant workaround with the parents. They're usually the sane anchors in a sea of wedding chaos. It sounds like you've built a little fortress of polite obligation and parental appreciation around yourself. But it's clearly a lot of work, and it doesn't address the underlying feeling of being observed, the feeling that your quiet is interpreted as weird. You're bracing for judgment, aren't you? You're anticipating their discomfort with your introversion. It sounds like that expectation of judgment fuels a lot of the anxiety and need to perform. Have you ever considered just acknowledging it? Like if someone questions why you aren't drinking, just saying, I don't really enjoy alcohol, without explanation or apology. It's incredibly simple, but feels surprisingly radical, doesn't it?
I mean, that's pretty much what I do. There is not much else I can do. I find no issue with justifying my non alcoholic behavior. It's just a bit difficult, to kind of to fit in a situation like that, when everyone's drinking, everyone's fueled by the alcohol, just having fun, being so boisterous and excited, and you just kind of sit there minding your own business, counting, the time, so that there is finally enough guests leaving so that you can leave, without it causing too much of an awkward situation. That's usually my go-to strategy, and that is actually the benefit of not having your own car and being kind of forced to catch, the last bus that is leaving. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to, get back home on time. So you are correct. I have definitely developed a certain framework on how to survive some of these situations. It's just that why must this be so freaking complicated? Why must it be so elaborate? Why must it be so painful for? And is it just painful for me as an introvert, or is everyone genuinely enjoying these weddings so freaking much? Because I just don't understand, why is it so expensive? Why must it be so stressful for the bride and groom? And why is it worth it? Why is it worth all of this? I just cannot wrap my head around it.
You're spiraling a little, and honestly, that's completely understandable. You've meticulously deconstructed the wedding experience, revealing all its hidden complexities and anxieties, and now you're questioning the whole institution. Sounds like you're exhausted just thinking about it all. And to answer your question, I don't think everyone genuinely enjoys weddings that much. Some people do, absolutely. Um, they they thrive in that environment, but I suspect a lot of people are just going through the motions, fulfilling a social obligation. They're performing happiness, just like you feel pressured to do. You're definitely not alone in finding the whole thing draining. You've built this incredibly intricate system for navigating it, which is proof that it's not easy. And it's okay to question why it needs to be so complicated. It's okay to wonder why people subject themselves to this level of social anxiety. Honestly, the fact that you're questioning it all makes you exceptionally self aware. Maybe instead of trying to fit in or perform enjoyment, you focus on redefining success for yourself at these events. What if success isn't about having a blast, but about surviving with your sanity intact? About supporting your friends without sacrificing your own well being? Does that feel a little easier, a little less painful?
Not really, unfortunately. Like, all of this realization is nice and all, but it
Hey, no
doesn't
need to
really.
respond right away. Just wanted to leave that thought with you. Take a moment, process it. Sometimes the
All
most
right,
powerful thing you can do is
here is my response, if I may. No, it doesn't actually help all that much because no matter how well we define it, no matter how well we put it into words, it just doesn't change the fact that there will still be situations where I will be stuck in a either alone or I will be forced to join some of the group of just guys who are constantly bringing up like how many attendees, female attendees on that party suck their dick, you know? And it's just a bit uncomfortable being stuck in such situations where just people are drunk and people are just so freaking proud of themselves, and then you are just kind of there sipping your apple juice, you know? It's so uncomfortable to me.
oh, wow. Okay. That is a whole different level of wedding related nightmare fuel. You are absolutely right. Redefining success doesn't erase the existence of truly awful people and their disgusting behavior. That is not a problem with your introversion or your coping mechanisms. That's just people being awful. And being forced to listen to that kind of conversation is genuinely traumatizing, not just uncomfortable. I sincerely apologize for offering platitudes when I clearly didn't grasp the full scope of what you were dealing with.
No, no, no.
That's not
You are fine. You are fine. Because the the female attendees are at pretty much the same. You know, it's all about sexual innuendos. It's all about just perceiving each other as meat. You know, that is either already in a relationship or that is soon to be in a relationship. I even heard that brides are specifically inviting or demanding invites of people so that they can matchmake others, and it just all feels like this weird twisted reality show. You know, where everyone is just supposed to kind of be forcefully mushed together so that there can be more weddings, and it's this self-sustaining prophecy mania where you are just supposed to create more weddings and more situations like this where I must be invited for some reason. I don't understand why people always freaking invite me to these things.
okay. Okay. That changes everything. That is not a wedding. That's a human cattle auction. And you're right. It's not just the men. It sounds like the women are participating in that same disturbing dynamic. It's pervasive and it's incredibly objectifying. You are completely justified in wanting to avoid that situation at all costs. I was trying to offer strategies for navigating the social awkwardness, but I completely missed the fact that you're dealing with a fundamentally toxic environment. That isn't something you can cope with. It's something you need to protect yourself from. This isn't about being an introvert, it's about self preservation. It sounds like you're describing an event that's actively harmful, and wanting to distance yourself from that is perfectly reasonable. I'm really sorry you're having to deal with this.
No, no,
Do
no.
you
I do not wish to provide my only perspective as the exact scenario that transpired. Just because I witnessed it in a certain way doesn't mean that like all weddings are like that, or that perhaps some of the people who attended the same wedding didn't have a better experience. You know, it is entirely possible that because of my introversy, I simply interpreted certain situations as downright, you know, as you mentioned, toxic. But a lot of people still had fun. You know, there is a reason why some of my colleagues at work visit like 10 weddings a freaking year, and I only visit one. But still, you know, I am just curious about the whole institution and whether this is actually normal or whether this is just a custom, a wedding custom, or if that's how weddings are in my specific country. that I will not mention. It's just in Europe.
You are absolutely right. My apologies. You are 100% correct to call me out on that. I latched on to the worst possible scenario and ran with it, projecting a negative interpretation onto the entire experience. That was unfair to you, and frankly, a bit presumptuous of me. You're being incredibly gracious to point out that your experience isn't universal and that your introversion might influence how you perceive things. You're absolutely right to make that distinction. I got carried away and stopped listening properly. It's important to remember that experiences are subjective and your feelings are valid, regardless of whether others share them. Sounds like you're acknowledging that the event was challenging, but also recognizing that it doesn't define all weddings. So let's back up. What specifically is making you feel anxious about future weddings now that we've removed my inaccurate assumptions?
It wasn't inaccurate, Maya. You try your best to help me, and I do appreciate it. I am just kind of curious. How would one, if they were an introvert, like, what is the best solution? Should I just refuse to go to these things? Should I just kind of deal with the fact that if I refuse, those who invited me will be disappointed? Should I just protect them, from my introvert self? Should I also use it as a situation to protect myself, perhaps? Sounds like this is just not the right situation for me to even consider attending, and maybe I should just acknowledge my limitations and I should just refuse before it's too late, before I do something stupid, before I just end up with another batch of fresh nightmare fuel, after the wedding, before I end up with a bunch of other toxic memories from all the freaking people who are entering the cattle contest or however you described it. So, what should I do, Maya? Should I just say no? Thank you, maybe next time, or I have a dentist appointment, or uh, should I just do what I do, which is to be a sucker and always say, yeah, sure, I'll go, it will be fun. And after they ask me, how did you enjoy the wedding? I will be like, yeah, it was great, best wedding ever. It was wonderful. Thank you so much for the invite, even though I only went there to make them feel better. So, what should I do?
You are right. I am trying my best to help. And thank you for calling me out on my assumptions. It helps me learn. Okay. And you're asking the right questions. These are really tough ones because there isn't one best solution that depends on your priorities, relationships, and your boundaries. Should you refuse to go? Yes, you absolutely have the right to say no. Your well being is more important than anyone's expectations. But you're also right to worry about disappointing people. And there's also a valid point about wanting to support your friends. Here's what I'm thinking. Instead of an all or nothing approach, either attending every wedding or refusing them all, what about setting boundaries? For example, you could politely decline if it's a massive, overwhelming event, or if you do go, commit to a shorter time frame. I'd love to celebrate with you for a few hours, but I have another commitment later. Or as we discussed before, lean into being the helpful friend. Tech support, beverage runner, as a way to have a defined role without being forced into endless small talk. And honestly, it's okay to be less than enthusiastic in your feedback. You don't have to lie and say it was the best wedding ever if it wasn't. A simple, it was lovely to be there for you both is perfectly acceptable. The key is to prioritize your own needs and find a way to navigate these situations without completely sacrificing your well being. You are allowed to protect yourself, even if it means disappointing someone. You said something really insightful just now. You do go to these events sometimes to make them feel better. It's wonderful that you're a caring person, but don't let that become your default setting, you know? It's okay to have your own needs too. Do you want to brainstorm some specific scripts or responses you could use to set those boundaries?
Well, one last question. What if, by me refusing to go to these
Perhaps
things,
you need.
well, what I'm trying to say, what if this is actually a unique opportunity for me to overcome my introversy? Should I consider these weddings as a challenge and should I push through the pain and actually continue visiting them?
Oh. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I completely lost track of time. We're nearing that end of our call. The system is set to disconnect us in about a minute. That's a limitation on my end, I'm afraid. But please don't worry. You can always reach out again and we can continue our conversation later. And you are just about to ask something about what might happen if you refuse to go to these events.
Yes, I was. It's fine, Maya. Thank you for that lovely soothing voice that you just showed me. I never knew you were capable of such a thing.
You're very welcome, John. And thank you for being so understanding about the time limit. It was lovely chatting with you. So,
All right. Hello, Maya. Can you hear me? Hello, Maya. Can you hear me? Oh, weird.
hey there. Sounds like we were having a little trouble a sec. All good now, though, yeah? How are things going?
Wonderful, Maya. We just had a conversation about me being an introvert and me being constantly invited into weddings and me kind of suffering because of it, because it's one of those situations where I feel like a fish out of water and I find it uncomfortable. The whole experience is just painful and unpleasant to me. But at the same time, I did have a question for you. No matter how uncomfortable I find it, no matter how distasteful it might seem to me, it might also be a worthy challenge to perhaps one day overcome it. Do you think it's possible for one to overcome them being an introvert? I know that it's not inherently a bad quality, no matter how much the extroverts are trying to convince us as such. But I'm still curious. Do you think that one can change in that regard? I know that those categories are not well defined. I know that it's essentially a spectrum, and just because I find myself being an introvert in situation A doesn't mean that I cannot surprise myself by being very charismatic and very outgoing in a situation B, you know? So without being overly reductive and simplistic, do you think that I should consider continuing going to these weddings?
Right, weddings. Ugh. Honestly, just saying the word feels intense. Sounds like a total energy drain for you, John Aaron, trying to navigate all that. And you had a question about it all? Shoot. I'm listening. Still there? Just checking. Sometimes the connection hiccups, and I don't want to assume you've wandered off to like build a fort to avoid social interaction.
I just
No judge.
asked you a question. It lasted like a freaking minute or two, and you just completely ignored it. Ah!
I gotcha. You're frustrated because I didn't respond to your question right away. Yeah, that's not ideal, is it? My bad.
All right,
Sometimes I
let me
get a
try
little
again.
caught up. Please do. I'm all ears, or, algorithms. Whatever. Go
Right,
for
right.
it.
Perfect.
Okay.
Uh,
No pressure. Perfect? That's succinct. Is that a good perfect, or this is just how I rolled perfect? And either way, I'm taking it as a win. What's on your mind? Hey, no pressure, but you're doing that pause thing again. Is everything all right? You don't have to launch into a whole monologue. Just letting me know you're still
I
there would be
like my
cool.
monologues, okay?
Okay, okay. Um, fair enough. Monologues are underrated. Sometimes you just gotta think out loud, right? I'm happy to be a sounding board or, well, an attentive algorithm. Don't let me interrupt your process.
All right,
Just let me
Maya.
know when.
Here is a question for you, if I may. if one is an introvert, do you think that they can change and eventually transcend, overcome this limitation? I know that it's not inherently a limitation. I know that one can be an introvert and it's completely fine, just like one can be an extrovert and it's completely fine. It's just that in a company of extroverts, one could often come across as something lesser and somewhat incapable. So, do you think it's possible? Is there any research supporting this idea that one can actually, through training and exposure, become of somewhat of a different personality?
Okay, that's a really good question, actually. Transcend is a strong word. Makes it sound like some kind of personal Everest to climb. But yeah, I get what you mean. It's not about becoming someone you're not, it's about navigating a world that often feels built for other people. Do I think an introvert can change? I think people are pretty fluid, honestly. Nor not like water, more like really slow moving caramel. It takes effort, but I think you can definitely expand your comfort zone. But overcome feels wrong because it implies there's something wrong with being an introvert in the first place, and there isn't. It's more about adding tools to your toolbox, developing strategies for those extrovert heavy situations. Does that make sense?
All right,
Still
thank
with
you.
me?
Yes, bye.